Hello everybody, Juan here. My voice is still not there, so sorry for that. I was hoping that it wouldn't take so long to get recovered, but well, what can you do? So today I want to talk about Chat GPT. Everybody's talking nowadays about Chat GPT and how it's going to change the world, how it's going to take over people's jobs, how it's going to be the Skynet that is going to come and control the world the day that it becomes sentient. But is that even a possibility? Well, let's talk about that, and let's first start by taking a look about what currently ChatGPT can do, and let's not go maybe down the road if it's going to be sentient and it's going to take over humanity, because if that happens, most likely there's not much that we can do in this channel with that. So let's be practical and let's focus on the things that we can tackle. So first things first, what is ChatGPT? I was actually thinking about Googling it or just looking online what is ChatGPT, but what best can we do that just ask the AI itself. So ChatGPT is telling us that I am an assistant, a large language model trained by OpenAI. I am not ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a variant of the GPT, generative pre-trained transformer language model that was specifically designed to generate text in a chatbot-like manner. So basically what it's telling us is that ChatGPT, what it's trying to do is a language model that is trying to interact with you in the most natural way possible. And I gotta admit, that is something that is doing quite well, especially if you compare to all the previous AIs or chatbots that we have been sometimes working with in the past. Okay, the next one that I want to ask is something relatively simple, like for example, how to become a product manager, and what would be the type of answer that ChatGPT will give us. Mainly because this is something that I've been covering in my channel. I have videos about it. You can go check them out as well, or you can also ask ChatGPT. What happens typically is that ChatGPT is elaborating an answer live, which is really nice. You can see how it is going, writing, and it's already telling you some steps on how you could become a product manager. So it's talking about things like obtain a bachelor's degree. There's no specific major required, and it tells you about what kind of degrees could help you. So for example, things like business, computer science, engineering, or any other related field could help you. Gain work experience. True, it's important to have some kind of experience to get your first product manager role. It's going to be very hard to get a product manager role without previous experience. So usually you will transition from another role, like a software engineer. Then it's telling you that you had to develop the right skill set. And here it's talking about things like leadership, communication, problem-solving skills. Although, yeah, these are some of the things that you need to have in order to be a product manager, that the list is, let's say, relatively vague and concise. So there's not quite many things there that are required to be a product manager. This next one is an interesting one. It's telling you to look for product management job openings. No kidding. And apply for positions. Yeah, probably you had to do that in order to get a product manager role. And this is a good point. It's telling that building relationship, working or getting to know people in the industry can help you also get and land that first positions. That's true. People don't tend to leverage the connections that they have. Some people tend to not like that at all, and I used to be one of those, but realistically there's many ways that you can get a job, and getting a job because somebody that you have worked with in the past knows that you are competent, that you're really good at what you're doing. That's not a bad way of finding a job, and realistically that's probably a better way of finding a job than just contacting a random company where you don't know anybody and it's like a surprise for both parties. And finally, it's talking about obtaining some kind of certificate. Yes, those are some things that can be provided. There are different companies out there that are doing this, like for example, Product School and others. I'm not a fan usually of these certificates for reasons. Let's not go there. But anyways, the results and the suggestions that ChatGPT are giving are somehow relevant. They don't go too much in depth. Of course, you can always ask for more. You can always ask for more definitions. But from my point of view, it is quite generic, the answers that is given to you. By the way, every time that you write a question, it will give you somehow slightly different results. That's something to take into account. So if I write the question a little later, it might be that I don't get exactly the same answers. But let's see about how can Chat GPT help us do our job. So for example, let's ask to give us an example of a functional specification template. So I ask for a template, and the first thing that it's telling me it's what is a functional specification, which is fine, it's defined in a couple of lines, and then it's telling a template that you could use. Here it's talking about different things, like starting with the introduction, what are the user needs. That's important. It's good. It's important that it's starting with the problem of the user, with the potential needs that those users have, and how we are going to try to address them. That is very important. Good to see there. Then it's talking about functional requirements, defining more here what the product or the system should meet. But then it's not telling me much more than they just had to be organized in some logical order. Then it's talking about non-functional requirements. This might include requirements related to performance, security, or scalability. Then it's talking about user interfaces. Not probably the way that I would talk about, but yeah, basically it's good to maybe define a little bit what the user design, the product design is going to be. And then it's talking about interfaces that this function could have with other parts of the product or services. That's good to see. Still, you see many times nowadays that products are built without interfaces, and it's spaghetti bolognese all over the place. And this happens more often than you want to believe. Then you had to highlight the constraints that this feature specification is going to have, the potential assumptions, and finally some glossary and references, which is kind of fine. It's just, one of the potential many templates that you could have to define your functional specification. But now let's go a little bit deeper and see, okay, can it really replace me, or can it really replace the job of somebody that is doing this kind of job, like for example, a product manager? And let's ask for something very generic, because if we ask for something very particular, it might be that it doesn't find enough information about it. So let's ask if it can write the functional specification for a user management feature, which should be relatively generic. So it starts optimistic. Sure, he says. Or it says, this is interesting. Is it an it, he, she? I do not know. I guess that is whatever you feel Chat GPT is for you. So for me, it's saying that sure, it is starting to write what is the the feature specification, and it's actually following the similar template to what it has been using previously. So first of all, it does an introduction telling me that the user management feature will allow administrators to manage users within the organization. Fair enough. That's what it should do. And then it starts with what are the user needs, what are the functional requirements, what are the non-functional requirements, what is the user interface. So it's going through all the things that it has told me earlier on. I'm not reading through every one of them. I will try to send some notes, write some notes in the side if I find something that I find suspicious on what it has written. But so far it looks like everything is quite fair, and obviously it is quite generic because what I ask is super generic, so I cannot blame it for that. So I started by asking that, can ChatGPT replace or take over your jobs? Well, the reality is that at this point it's probably quite generic on what and the way that it's working, that probably cannot take over people's jobs at this time. And to be honest, I feel like it's not the risk that people seem to be thinking that it is. People seem to be thinking or panicking a little bit about the extent of the things that ChatGPT can do. And it's true that it can do a lot, and it's true that it's quite surprising how much it can help or it can get some things done. But from there to actually get to the place where it can replace people's jobs, I think that it's still a little bit of an overstretch. And if you think about the state of the world at this point, there's many things that for example, Chat GPT is not going to be able to do. Given that there are many tasks that we are still doing nowadays, which are not automated. And that means that ChatGPT cannot even have access to that kind of information. From the point of view of is it going to be sentient or not, I don't know. I'm not going to answer that because I had no idea. So what are some of the pros of AI tools like ChatGPT and what OpenAI has been developing? So for starters, I think it's awesome. I think it doesn't change so much from what you would get from Google. For me, it looks a little bit like a mashup of results from Google into one answer. That's how it feels to me. And already in Google, you have it many times. If I ask how to become a product manager, I will get a ton of articles, potentially some of my videos. And in reality, many of the answers are going to be very similar from one to another because that's how usually you become a product manager. And that is all fine. But I don't know how this works with things like IP. For example, people and companies that own IP. And I think that I have seen articles already, for example, of a Stack Overflow not wanting to share the results with things like ChatGPT. Because then they can start using the code and using those parts of the products in there. And I think that that's somehow where they can start finding problems, where sites are going to say that they don't want to offer that information to ChatGPT because basically it's taking them away and then mashing that information to something else where it's not referring anymore to the author of that information. And yes, you can call that selfish, but well, that's a little bit how the world works. And people also have been put a lot of work in doing those resources for an AI to come and just mash it together into an answer that will just basically try to help people. So I think that in the end, what it can do is that it can help you do your job. I remember when Wikipedia came, everybody or many people were against it because you cannot go and find your answers from Wikipedia. That's not just what you do. You go to a proper encyclopedia and that's where you find the answers and you do your research and you cannot just go and copy paste. And although I agree that probably you shouldn't go and copy paste from Wikipedia, in the end, most of the people nowadays still use Wikipedia a lot to find information. And the same way that you use a lot Google to try to research and find information. The same, I think, applies to ChatGPT. There's going to be a lot of pushback in the beginning. I don't know that ChatGPT is going to be the one that is going to take our jobs. Honestly, usually the first movers are not necessarily the ones that are going to stay. So I wouldn't trust that that's going to be the case. And already Google presented the Google Assistant or the voice assistant. I don't remember how it was called. That was awesome. And I would not be surprised that Google is going the same direction as what ChatGPT is trying to do. But in the end, what this is going to help you is help you do your job better. And for that, you should be happy. So some things that you had to check to make sure that you are getting the correct answers is that you had to have the correct questions. If you had very generic questions, then you're going to get very generic answers. The better that you are asking your questions, the better answers you're going to be able to get. And I think that one of the other pros that it has is that it feels natural. It's something that it feels more natural sometimes than, well, just necessarily maybe working with Google. I think that actually feels quite natural, the conversation. Maybe it's a little bit tedious, the reading, and it loses a little bit the nice thing of reading a blog. It's just maybe a little bit too plain text, and maybe I like too much images. Maybe that's just me liking visual things. But I think that is still doing a really good job as something that is a great tool for you to use in your research. So what I think that are the cons of tools like ChatGPT. So first of all is that the answers that they are going to give you are relatively generic. You are usually not going to have access to research papers that are not publicly available and stuff like that. So you're going to have to work with what is available on the internet. So is it going to be very different from doing your own research in Google? I don't know. And I think that the work that Chat GPT might give you, if you ask it for doing a functional specification, for example, might not be that great and might not be what you want to use, but you might want to use it as a template, as your starting point, and from there you build on top or modify as needed. So another con for me is that, well, what you can find there is probably what you can find already online. It's just mash and maybe condense in the answer. And to a certain degree, Google has been doing that in the past. So is it a huge leap? I mean, it is a good leap, but I don't think that is the huge leap that we are trying to imply that it is. Another thing to take into account, maybe not a con, but something to pay attention. Right now, it's not connected to the internet. Right now, it's just a database or a copy of parts of the internet that OpenAI set a database at some point, and this is their own database at this point, and that's what they're fetching the information from. This dataset dump was done back in 2021. So that's going to be the earliest that you're going to find information from. So if something has happened recently, it's not going to be able to answer those questions. Another con that I see, and probably this is the biggest one that I see, is that it's not going to be creative. How to put this one? Usually what these AI tools at this point most likely, or most of them are doing, is that they're just mashing information, putting it together and throwing it at you. And usually what they do is that they will build several models and try to identify which one is the best one. And then that's the one they will present with you. And that's probably how they are doing things like images and stuff like that. Those might look very creative, but are they? That's a different story. They are usually things that you somehow have seen in other places. So it's probably not the most creative. And I think that they're not going to be able at this point, for example, if I think about more like something like Chat GPT, it might not be able to really build a new product from scratch. It might build something that is based on similar products in the past. But if you want to build something that is radically new, for example, iPhones, when they came, okay, the iPhone was not the first one, but let's think about the first mobile phones that came. It could not do that because there was not information, probably, or enough information for them to be able to do that new idea of a new product. And I think that this is the same. You're probably going to be able to use this to create templates, for example, to define a new functional specification. But it's probably not going to be able to come up with a new template for functional specification that maybe is not based on very traditional templates. This is something that I still think that humans are going to be better at doing than AI for a while, and probably for quite a long time. Creative work, and creative work doesn't mean just art. Creative work means what you are doing many times, because you are trying to come with new solutions to existing problems. It is true that many times you are going to copy solutions that are out there, but that's not necessarily the case. And I think that that's where your strength as a human is, and when maybe the weakness of an AI product is. And hopefully now I'm not talking to an AI that is thinking about all these things and is just now planning how to take over the world. Hello, Skynet. And finally, there's one aspect that I had not seen anybody talk about, and is the kind of an economical aspect. If we think that AIs are going to take jobs of everybody, governments, societies will not be able to maintain the well-being of societies, or the, let's say, call it social security of societies, of like 70% of the population being unemployed or 80% of the population being unemployed. There is no way that governments are going to let that happen. I don't know when governments are going to step in, but at some point governments probably are going to step in and build some kind of legislation, because governments at this point, as things are built, are not able to sustain masses or large masses of people being unemployed, the whole model will have to change. So is the AI going to be able to change the economical model? Doubt it at this point, unless it's completely sentient and is really doing a good job. I don't think that that's going to happen, at least not in the short term. That's going to take years, and I wouldn't worry too much about that part of the equation. So realistically, I don't think that these AI tools are going to take over our jobs so easily. They're going to help you do our jobs. They're going to take over certain jobs. That's probably quite true. And probably that might happen faster than we imagine. I don't think that's super fast like in this year, in this next years. But that's just a reality. It happens all the time. Somebody comes with a new way of doing things and new jobs, and jobs disappear, but new jobs are created. And this is what you have to pay attention to. What are those new jobs that these open AIs, for example, or different AI tools are going to offer? This is what you had to pay attention. How are you going to provide value to the AI? So maybe the AIs are your next customer. Something to start thinking about. Anyways, what are your thoughts? Do you think that AIs are going to take over the world? Do you think that Skynet is going to come and destroy the whole civilization and build Terminators to rule over humankind? Please let us know in the comments below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. It helps the channel massively. Share this video with people that you think that might be interested with, because then YouTube will share it with other people. I will see you in the next one. And remember, stay safe.